The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Matthew. After Jesus was baptized, he was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was famished. The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again, it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. And he said to him, "All these I will give you, if you will fall down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil left him, and suddenly angels came and waited on him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord.
So, if you are a fan of The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, you may have seen this wacky segment he does called The Wheel of Musical Impressions. It's like somewhere between the Wheel of Fortune and Rich Little. Remember Rich Little, the famous impressionist? And so how it works is a musical guest on The Tonight Show spins a wheel, and it randomly selects the name of another singer and a song. Now, this other singer and the song selected do not necessarily go together, but the guest has to perform the song doing an impression of the other singer's voice. You can view these Tonight Show segments on YouTube, by the way. So, for example, when pop singer Alicia Keys guested, she spins the wheel and it lands on Janis Joplin. But the song is Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. So Alicia Keys, pop singer, sings the nursery rhyme in the voice of hard rocker Janis Joplin. Can you imagine what that might sound like? It's actually pretty funny. On that same segment, Jimmy Fallon takes a turn at the wheel, and he gets Elvis Presley. He has to sound like the late Memphis blues rocker while singing the Meow Mix cat food commercial jingle. My sound guy up there, Pablo? This is what happens when you use technology. Wait 1 second. You get the point, right? So I only bring this up because it reminds me of all the discordant voices that assail us during Lent. And really, these voices seem to be with us, Lent or not. But can you hear it? Can you hear it now? Thanks, Pablo. I bring this up because of all the voices that we hear in the wilderness of Lent. And really, these voices seem to be with us, Lent or not. But Lent, these next 40 days or so, is the time in the church that we intentionally focus on the wilderness and try to learn what its voices have to teach us. Strange and incongruous voices. Voices that say one thing but mean something altogether different. Sometimes they are even our own inner voices, rerunning tapes of unhelpful messages from long ago. Voices of temptation, like the voice of Satan in our gospel lesson today. The season of Lent always begins with Jesus in the wilderness. He has just been baptized by John. And as soon as he comes up out of the water, he is led away from the river and into the wilderness of the desert. And the voice of God is still ringing in his ears. This is my Son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased. And no sooner does he arrive than the devil comes calling. What remained to be seen was what that meant exactly. How would God's beloved behave? What would he say or do? What would he stand for? What would he oppose? Would God give him special powers? Or would he make do with the standard human equipment package? No one knew any of that yet. Perhaps not even Jesus himself. He had been ordained by God at the river, but his ministry had not yet begun. If you've ever sat alone in the desert, you know how scary it can be, how lonely, how vulnerable you can feel. There is something about a desert, and I'm not just talking about physical deserts here, but spiritual ones as well. They can suck all of the self-confidence right out of you. It is so big, so quiet, so empty that you cannot help noticing how small and perishable you are, how tenuous life can feel. The future that seemed so certain just moments ago, suddenly a huge question mark. You remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. You wish you had someone to distract you from that fact, or at least someone to talk about it to. And sooner or later, that is when the voice of temptation comes calling. Have you ever felt it? Have you ever felt as if the devil is nipping at your heels? Take on any Lenten discipline, and sooner than you can throw yourself off a cliff, the temptation shows up. But trust me, the voices of temptation will not sound like a whispery serpent's voice, or even like a harsh demonic sound. The voice of temptation is seductive. If you are a biblical person, it sounds biblical. If you are a rational person, it seems rational. It will appeal to your greatest strengths. It will woo you in moments of weakness. A few years ago, Keith and I were about 2 days into Lent. We had both given up chocolate as our combined spiritual discipline, right? So it was our day off, a Friday, and we decided to go to the movies. And we did okay, managing to leave the Junior Mints and the Kit Kat bars alone. And then afterwards, we went to lunch, and there was some sort of a holdup in the restaurant kitchen. And so our waitress, seeing that we had waited for kind of a long time to be served our food, offered us a free dessert. We declined. No need to bring sweets into this. So, of course, what does she do? She brings us deep-fried Oreo cookies anyway. Now tell me, when does that ever happen, really? In the wilderness, the temptation is to stray from the values we hold dear, to take shortcuts, to avoid struggles, to find the easy way through, to listen to voices that would lead us away from God. The challenge in the wilderness is to listen to our living and life-giving God, no matter what. And with all our forms of media today, so often what tempts us are not necessarily bad things. Things like money and power and influence, sex, security, beauty, winning, fame. If you have spent any time in the desert, you know how much you can wonder where God is if you have been stranded there for a while. Why doesn't God send a rescue team or give us the power to rise up and roar so loud at the devil that he runs away and never comes back again? I suspect that something like that was going on with Jesus in the wilderness. After that amazing scene at the river where the sky broke open, the dove descended, and the voice from heaven introduced him as God's own child. It was so spectacular that we might expect Jesus to just sprout wings and to fly away, or become a kind of superhero who would stop being human in order to rescue human beings, showing up in the nick of time to snatch us out of the hands of danger. Only none of that happened. For 40 days and 40 nights, there was no sign of God at all. The sky stayed shut. There were no doves, no voice from heaven offering reassuring words. There was just him, the desert, and finally, the devil. Notice that all along, the devil subtly suggests that Jesus deserves better than what God is giving to him. Why should the Son of God go hungry? Why should he be subject to Caesar when Caesar should be subject to him? If God could not do better than that by his own Son, the devil suggests, then maybe Jesus needs to start looking for another kind of father. If you are the Son of God, the devil says 3 times. He is daring Jesus to prove who he is by acting like a God instead of a man, tempting him to rise above the hunger, the danger, the helplessness of being human, and to see something better for himself, to whip up a hot meal for himself, to summon up angel bodyguards, and to start planning his inauguration as the president of the world. He is the Son of God, after all. This is where everyone finds out what being the Son of God really means. And it means not seizing power, but turning it down. As much as it may surprise everyone, what being the Son of God really means is not rising out of his humanity, but being beloved by God, for sinking into it, even when Jesus is famished, even when he is taunted by the devil himself. It is someone who can listen to every good reason in the world for becoming God's rival and remaining instead God's child. In the wilderness, the temptation is to substitute stuff in the place of God to make us feel better. The challenge is to live knowing that God is sufficient. One of the great temptations we face, especially in this country, is the temptation always to have more. Happiness is just around the corner, if only we can accumulate more things or more wealth or more luxuries. Stories about the wilderness are not stories of resisting or triumphing over temptation. They are stories of identity, stories of getting a little lost and scared and finding out who you really are. Like the Israelites who wandered for 40 years in the desert. Like Noah and his family who holed up on a boat for 40 days of cataclysmic rain. Like Moses who went up the mountaintop to meet with God for 40 days. Or even like Jacob, who wrestled with God at midnight in the wilderness, only to walk for the rest of his life with a limp and a new name. Who am I? Where is my life headed? We answer those questions every time we face and respond to our temptations. We face ourselves and learn the ways in which our life has become disfigured, disconnected from the original beauty of this creation and the transfiguring presence of our God. And that temptation is unique to each and every one of us because it reveals what is inside us. It reveals what fills us. And amazingly, in this way, temptation can be a gift, offering us something to be discovered and the opportunity to recover ourselves. So, what fills your life? What fills your life? What distracts you? What tempts you? Who are the people that push your buttons? What circumstances call forth a response other than the one you would like for it to be? Because this is not about people, situations, or things. This is about who you are, what directs your life, and what you are willing to do about it. And please keep in mind that this does not imply judgment or a conclusion or an F on God's final exam. We don't pass or fail our temptations. We learn the truth about how we see ourselves. We learn the truth about the direction our lives are headed and who we are becoming. And like a lot of life lessons, this learning is neither easy nor pain-free, but it is necessary if God is to reshape and redirect our life. So while this is chiefly a story about Jesus' identity, inasmuch as we belong to him, it is a story about our identity too. Have you ever been tempted? Tempted to believe that you deserve bigger and better than what you have? Have you ever heard that devilish voice in your head saying, if you are a child of God, shouldn't things be going a little smoother for you? If you really are a Christian, shouldn't you be happier or healthier or richer or safer? In the end, the devil is all talk. empty talk. And by now, all of you know what to say back to him, right? You heard Jesus say it in our gospel lesson today. Away with you, Satan. I would rather be a hungry child of God than a well-fed player on your team. Now go, away with you. And if you can manage that, then chances are very good that you will hear another voice before long, a voice 10,000 times more beautiful. This is my beloved child, the voice will say, and in you I am well pleased. Amen.